What if everything you call you, your choices, desires, dreams, even your rebellion, was actually written long before you were aware of it? What if free will is the most elegant illusion the mind ever produced? Not as a deception, but as a survival mechanism. Stay until the end, because the final twist is this. You were never the puppet. You were always the writer. You just forgot. From the moment you take your first breath, your subconscious begins its work, not as a passive recorder, but as an interpreter. It doesn't just catalog events like a historian. It assigns meaning like a playwright. It writes scripts you will unknowingly act out for decades, often thinking they are choices. You see, the subconscious doesn't care what happened. It only cares about how it felt, and what it needed to do to keep you alive. And survival doesn't mean physical safety. It means emotional belonging. This is why two children in the same household can grow into radically different adults, not because of what they experienced, but because of the stories their subconscious wrote about those experiences. And those stories? They become the invisible ink in the script you live by. The subconscious writes in metaphor, in fear, in association. And once it writes a story, it does not update it until you consciously rewrite it. Most people never do. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung called this layer the personal unconscious, a deep vault of forgotten impressions, unmet needs, repressed fears, unspoken vows, and internalized roles you adopted not because you wanted to, but because your survival depended on it. And above that is the collective unconscious, a timeless library of mythic patterns. Jung believed we are not blank slates, but living vessels animated by archetypes: the hero, the victim, the orphan, the savior, the tyrant, the seducer, the martyr. These are not characters in stories. These are programs in your psyche. You don't choose them. They choose you. They seek expression through you. And here's the shocking truth. Studies in neuroscience now show that 95%, 98% of all cognitive activity, emotions, actions, decisions, behavior, is initiated by the subconscious mind. So when you say, "This is just how I am," ask yourself, is it? Or is it just the role your subconscious cast you in? Let me show you how it plays out. You think you fell in love. But what if it wasn't love at all? What if it was your wounded inner child searching for a mother in someone else's tenderness, craving the safety she never knew, even if it came wrapped in dysfunction? You think you're ambitious, but ambition without peace is often just unprocessed neglect. Maybe you're not chasing success, you're chasing the attention your father withheld. And no matter how far you rise, the void remains, because it was never about the goal. It was about being seen. You think you forgave them, but if you still flinch when someone raises their voice, if your body still tenses when you walk past a mirror, if you overreact to silence because it reminds you of abandonment, then you didn't forgive, you froze, and that freeze became a mask. Most people don't change, not because they can't, but because their subconscious believes change would threaten the identity they created to survive. And here's where it gets even darker. The subconscious cannot tell time. It doesn't know the trauma is over. To it, your boss is your alcoholic father. Your partner's withdrawal is your mother's abandonment. Your own success is dangerous because it could mean rejection. This is why healing isn't logical. It's biological. Your nervous system is time-locked. You are often living a present moment your body thinks is the past. This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to become aware of it, because otherwise, you will keep calling your trauma a type. You'll keep calling your patterns fate. You'll keep calling your fears intuition. And you'll keep calling your defenses personality. But it was never really you. It was the subconscious, pulling the strings behind the curtain, while you believed you were center stage, making your own moves. What if every decision you've ever made, from who you date to whether you hit snooze this morning, was already made before you were even aware of it? This isn't a philosophical riddle. It's the brutal conclusion of modern neuroscience. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet's groundbreaking experiment in the 1980s shattered our understanding of free will. Participants were asked to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, while Libet measured their brain activity. Shockingly, he discovered that the readiness potential, a burst of neural activity that signals an upcoming action, occurred up to 500 milliseconds before the participant consciously decided to move. Translation: your brain makes the decision. Then your conscious mind just notices it and takes credit for it. This led Libet to propose a radical idea. Conscious will might not initiate actions. It might only have the power to veto them. Like a last-minute editor, not an author. But it doesn't stop there. Functional MRI studies by researchers like John Dylan Haynes pushed this even further. In a 2008 experiment, participants were asked to press a button with either their left or right hand, whichever they felt like choosing. Brain scans predicted the decision up to 7 seconds before participants were even aware of having made it. Yes, 7 seconds. That's not free will. That's pre-programmed readiness disguised as choice. Your conscious mind is not the CEO of your life. It's the public relations department. It doesn't create the message. It spins it, justifies it, polishes it for your ego, and sells you the illusion of agency so you don't spiral into existential despair. And let's break it down. Every external event you experience is processed first through your limbic system, especially the amygdala, your brain's emotional surveillance center. It rapidly scans for danger, threat, or reward, and then triggers a cascade of chemical responses: cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine. This all happens before the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, has had a chance to analyze or contextualize anything. In other words, emotion makes the decision. Reason explains it after the fact. You didn't buy that expensive watch because it was a good investment. You bought it because it made you feel powerful, and then your rational mind constructed a post-purchase justification about value or longevity. This doesn't make you irrational, it makes you human. Here's the part no one wants to admit. Most of your life is not a conscious creation. It's a subconscious repetition. You repeat your reactions. You repeat your emotional loops. You repeat the same kind of relationships, the same type of self-sabotage, the same arguments, but with different people. Because the subconscious isn't interested in growth. It's interested in familiarity. This is why trauma loops are so hard to break. Your nervous system wires itself to expect and even crave what it already knows. You may consciously want peace, love, abundance, but if your body only recognizes chaos, scarcity, or rejection, it will subtly steer you back to those conditions, and all the while, your mind will invent stories to explain it. I guess I just attract toxic people. Maybe I'm not meant to succeed. That's just how I am. No, that's just how your neural conditioning is. Think of it like this. You are always responding to life with a lag. Your reactions are echoes. Your fears are past alarms ringing in present rooms. Your choices are predetermined moves on a chessboard built by memory, trauma, reward, and survival instincts. The illusion of free will is comforting, but it's also what keeps most people stuck, because you can't change what you refuse to admit isn't truly free. Yes, your subconscious moves first. Yes, emotion hijacks reason. Yes, you are mostly living a story you didn't write. But awareness is the only force that can interrupt the cycle. The moment you see the pattern, you introduce a new variable into the system. You bring time to a place where time didn't exist before. You pause, you feel, you choose again. It's not that free will doesn't exist. It's that it only exists in the moments you become conscious enough to interrupt the unconscious. And most people go their entire lives never doing that. Keep watching, because what comes next is even more important. Once you realize your thoughts aren't truly yours, your choices aren't as free as you believed, and your life is mostly a loop, you're ready for the first real act of freedom: waking up. Have you ever paused and thought, why does this keep happening to me? You change cities, change jobs, change partners, yet somehow the emotional pattern remains. You feel invisible again, unappreciated again, abandoned again, like the universe is playing some cruel joke, same suffering, different mask. But this is no joke. And it's certainly not coincidence. It's psychic recursion. You're not repeating circumstances, you're repeating feelings. And until you become aware of it, your life becomes a stage where your subconscious directs the same drama over and over again. Your subconscious writes its script not in logic, but in emotionally charged experiences, especially those you were too young, powerless, or unresourced to process. Your first betrayal, your first rejection, your first moment of feeling unworthy, unseen, or unloved. Those moments became blueprints, emotional templates. Your nervous system encoded them not as bad events, but as familiar conditions for survival. And the subconscious doesn't crave joy, it craves familiarity, even if it hurts. That's why the abused child often becomes the adult who accidentally dates abusers. Why the person with an emotionally distant parent seeks partners who don't text back. Why the person bullied at school ends up with a boss who humiliates them in meetings. It's not a curse, it's repetition compulsion. A defense mechanism Freud once described as an attempt to master trauma by unconsciously recreating it. In simpler terms, you're reenacting the wound in hopes of changing the ending. But here's the twist. Until you become aware of the pattern, you don't change the ending. You re-traumatize the beginning. Think of your life as a series of auditions. You don't do it consciously, but your subconscious is constantly looking for people who can play out unresolved scenes. A colleague becomes the sibling you always competed with. A partner becomes the parent you couldn't please. A friend becomes the one who inevitably betrays you, just like before. It's not that you're cursed to meet the wrong people. It's that you are emotionally magnetized toward what feels familiar, and what's familiar is the wound. This is why people don't change, even when they say they want to. Because healing is not just about feeling better. It's about letting go of the identity you built around the pain, and that's terrifying. To the part of you that survived by being small, agreeable, invisible, over-responsible, angry, anxious, or perfect, healing looks like suicide. Because it threatens the only way you've ever known how to be safe. That's why people sabotage love, why they procrastinate success, why they start a new chapter and secretly want the old story back. Because healing is unfamiliar, and in the nervous system, unfamiliar equals sign unsafe. This is why awareness is the first act of liberation. When you realize you've been living on autopilot, acting out the same unmet need, the same protection strategy, the same unconscious narrative, then and only then can you ask, who am I when I'm not protecting the wound? What would my life look like if I stopped repeating this story? What if the people around me aren't doing this to me? What if I'm assigning them roles in a play they never auditioned for? To truly change, you must stop changing the actors and start rewriting the script. That means grieving what never happened, feeling what you weren't allowed to feel, breaking the cycle of emotional amnesia, and daring, yes, daring, to create a life that is unrecognizable to the version of you who needed the wound to feel real. Because only then do you stop looking for love through suffering. Only then do you stop validating your worth through pain. Only then do you stop mistaking trauma chemistry for fate. Carl Jung issued a warning that most people ignore until it's too late. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But what if your fate has nothing to do with the stars, and everything to do with the pain you never examined? We speak of destiny like it's written in cosmic ink, out there, somewhere, above us. But what if your destiny is quietly scripted inside you by archetypal patterns you didn't choose, yet have obeyed your entire life? What if you're not living, but rehearsing? Jung described archetypes as primal, universal blueprints embedded deep in the collective unconscious, ancient forces that shape human behavior regardless of time, culture, or belief. You don't invent them, you inherit them. They are psychological patterns of emotion, behavior, and belief that act like operating systems. Once activated, often by early trauma or unmet needs, they begin to dictate the roles you inhabit in your life. These archetypes become survival masks, forged in childhood but worn well into adulthood, long after they've outlived their usefulness. Let's decode a few. The savior. You always put others first. You rescue, fix, overextend, self-sacrifice, telling yourself it's love. But deep down, you're not trying to save them. You're trying to save the child version of you who never got saved. You confuse being needed with being loved. You heal others in hopes someone will finally turn around and say, "Now let me heal you." The orphan. You crave connection but hide in plain sight. You're independent, low maintenance, easy. But this isn't strength, it's armor. You learned invisibility kept you safe. To be seen was to be judged, punished, or ignored, so you made yourself small, unnoticeable. And now, as an adult, being seen still feels dangerous. You call it introversion, but it's trauma. The saboteur. You get close to success, then pull the plug. You ghost opportunities, self-destruct relationships, procrastinate on purpose. Why? Because deep down, success equals risk. To succeed would mean exposure, expectations, responsibility. And if you're loved because of your success, what happens if you fail? Better to fall on your own terms than be pushed later by someone you trusted. So you stay in failure because it feels like home. These are not flaws, these are roles. And roles can be rewritten. Your personality might be a costume. Here's the radical idea. The traits you defend as just who I am may not be your authentic self at all. Your perfectionism? A mask to earn love. Your anger? A shield for grief. Your people-pleasing? A bribe for safety. Your detachment? A disguise for fear of abandonment. Most people think they're expressing themselves, but they're actually expressing their adaptations. And here's what's even wilder. These archetypes are not conscious. They don't knock on your door and say, "Hi, I'm the martyr. May I ruin your relationships?" They act through you. They write the emails. They say yes when you mean no. They choose the emotionally unavailable partner. They panic at the edge of success, and you think it's you, but it's not. It's the part of you still trapped in a role that once kept you alive, but now keeps you small. You're not broken. You're rehearsing. You've been running a script you didn't write. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you brilliant. Your psyche did what it had to do to survive. It chose roles to protect you. But survival is not the same as living. You don't need to keep rehearsing pain in order to feel safe. What you call your life might be the play. What you call fate might be the director. And what you call you might just be the actor who forgot there's a backstage. Here's the unnerving reality no one tells you. Your subconscious doesn't care what year it is. It only cares about how something feels. To the subconscious, time is not a straight line. It's a loop, non-linear, eternal. A memory that felt like terror at age 5 can still hijack your nervous system at age 35, as if it's happening now. Because emotionally, it is. You may walk into a meeting today as an accomplished adult, but the moment someone raises their voice, you freeze. You feel small, your heart races, you stammer, and you don't understand why. It's not because you're weak, it's because your subconscious just recognized the emotional signature of being scolded in 2nd grade, and it reacted before you had time to think. Trauma is not what happened, it's what got trapped. We often think trauma is about big things, war, abuse, violence, but trauma is far more subtle. Trauma is any experience you were too alone to process. It's what happened when you didn't feel safe and didn't have the support to metabolize it. That moment you were laughed at in class and felt your face go hot. That day your parent ignored your tears and told you to toughen up. That week you tried to express yourself and were told you were being dramatic. Those experiences are stored not in words, but in emotional code. And emotional code has no clock. Every time your heart races for no reason, every time you avoid eye contact, every time you shrink yourself before speaking, it might not be you. It might be a younger version of you still reacting to an old alarm that never got turned off. And that alarm doesn't respond to logic. You can tell yourself, "I'm safe now," 1,000 times, but the body won't believe it until you let it feel the fear that was never allowed. This is why healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about finishing the experience your nervous system never completed. This is where most people get stuck. They read the books. They say the affirmations. They understand their trauma, but they're still triggered, reactive, anxious, avoidant, or shut down. Why? Because awareness isn't enough. You cannot logic your way out of a pattern that was formed before you had language. You cannot solve a wound that was created through feeling, with only thinking. The conscious mind speaks English. The subconscious speaks sensation. That's why real healing requires more than insight. It requires embodiment, emotional exposure, nervous system recalibration. In simple terms, you have to feel your way through it. You have to revisit that scared 8-year-old, not to relive their terror, but to finally tell them, "I'm here, we're safe, you can come home now." The scariest part? Until you do this work, your present is haunted by emotional ghosts from your past. You'll keep reacting to shadows, keep mistaking intimacy for danger, keep avoiding risk and calling it intuition, keep feeling shame and calling it humility, keep repeating sabotage and calling it self-protection. Your subconscious will continue to replay these loops because it thinks you still need them. You are not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because your inner child still thinks they're in danger. And healing begins not by telling yourself, "I should be over this," but by honoring the fact that you've carried this for decades, because no one else could. But now, someone else can. You. Are we doomed? Or can we rewrite the script? It's the question that haunts anyone who's ever stared at their life and whispered, "Why does this keep happening?" Are we just puppets, forever moved by invisible strings, pulled by trauma, memory, fear, and unmet childhood needs? Or is there a way to cut the cords and write a new story? Here's the paradox most people never realize. You don't become free by resisting the puppet strings. You become free by seeing them clearly. Fighting your patterns only entangles them deeper. Denying your wounds only makes them louder. Pretending you're past it only ensures you're not. Freedom doesn't come through force. It comes through illumination. Awareness is the scalpel, but feeling is the blade. Most people try to heal with the mind. They analyze, overthink, journal, therapize, rationalize, But the subconscious doesn't live in your intellect. It lives in your flesh, your nervous system, your emotional body, and you can't dissect a feeling with thought. You have to feel it to release it. That's why awareness alone is only half the cure. It's the scalpel that opens the wound, but feeling is the blade that cuts the cord. You want to change your story? Start by asking different questions, the kind that don't seek answers, but revelation. Who taught me what love means? Was love warmth or reward? Did love mean safety or obligation? Was love freely given, or something I had to earn, perform, or bleed for? So many of us don't seek love. We seek what was familiar and called love. What role do I always end up playing? The caregiver? The achiever? The outsider? The rebel? The victim? Do I keep becoming the one who fixes everyone else so I don't have to feel my own mess? Do I stay small so others won't reject me for shining? Do I become difficult so I don't have to be vulnerable? These roles were once your survival, but now they are your prison. What part of me am I still trying to prove, protect, or punish? Am I trying to prove I'm worthy because no one ever told me I was? Am I protecting my heart because every time I opened it, I bled? Am I punishing myself for feeling too much, needing too much, being too much? Your patterns aren't random. They are rituals of unresolved pain. In a world obsessed with optimization and constant self-improvement, this is the most radical act of all. Stop trying to become more, and start remembering who you were before you were taught you were not enough. That radiant child before the mask, before the pleasing, before the walls, before you learned that love had conditions, that safety had a price, and that truth made you unlovable. It's about returning to someone ancient, the unconditioned you, the you beneath the roles, the you that never needed to be rewritten in the first place, just remembered. This is not self-help, this is soul retrieval, because the most powerful healing doesn't change who you are. It restores you to the truth of who you were, before the world told you otherwise. You were never the puppet, you were always the writer, but you had to lose the script, to remember you hold the pen. Maybe your free will isn't found in your impulses, but in your capacity to pause and choose again, to notice when a shadow archetype is speaking for you, to feel the emotion without obeying it, to rewrite the script, not with force, but with intimacy. True power is not in breaking the subconscious. It is in becoming so conscious that you transform the very theater where the play takes place. If this woke something in you, share this with someone who still believes they're broken. The truth might just set them free.